Week 4 is here, and we are once again coming at you with the most accurate picks on the entire platform. This week, great slate of games, many of which are within their own division. Starting things off, the Saints taking on the Falcons in Atlanta. And this is going to be a rough spot for whatever team loses this game. Someone could fall to 2-2 and someone could fall to 1-3. A hard hole to dig yourselves out of, particularly if the Bucs keep running away with the division. But I digress. On to the actual game. The Falcons are very good at running the ball. Bijan is dominant on the ground. I'd like to see him used a little bit more, but even with his limited uses, he has been elite carrying the ball. That is what beat up the Saints last week. Is Bijan as good as Saquon Barkley? Probably not, particularly not when he's running by that Falcons O-line. A good O-line, don't get me wrong, but certainly not the Eagles. But he will be able to bludgeon that front seven, get those tough yards, and Kirk Cousins, with the weapons he has, a much better passer than Jalen Hurts is. So the aerial game is going to be a bigger factor as well. The Saints are going to struggle stopping this team, but so are the Falcons. They've got a terrible run defense. They've got some big names in their secondary, but they cannot stop it up the middle. Kamara is going to go for at least 80, maybe 140, 150 on the ground against this Falcons unit. What I think it comes down to is the fact that Kirk Cousins is more clutch than Derek Carr. Yes, I know they're 1-2. They've lost 2 games late, whatever. I think Kirk in the regular season at 1 p.m. can lead game-winning drives, execute when it matters the most, and deliver his team victories Derek Carr simply cannot. That's why I'm picking the Falcons to win this week and get to 500.
This is one of the most intriguing matchups we've had to predict this season because to start the year, through the first 2 weeks, the Saints looked like one of the best teams in the NFL, and then they faltered last week a little bit against the Eagles. On the flip side, the Falcons looked really rough in week 1, and they almost beat the Kansas City Chiefs. But heading into this divisional matchup against the Saints, their starting center is on the IR. We don't know if their starting right tackle is going to play this week, so the strong run game you just talked about, Kirk Cousins' ability to move behind the line of scrimmage, is still limited, and with the Saints pass rush, how good that Dennis Allen defense can be, I am worried when you lose two starting offensive linemen in 1 week. So given that fact, I think the Saints will be able to move the ball with Alvin Kamara, with Chris Olave. They'll make enough plays, and I think the Falcons are going to lose because they're missing those 2 starting offensive linemen.
Well, they're missing at least one of them. The tackle is still up in the air. I assure you, they'll be able to run the ball just fine, ye of little faith. Either way, great divisional game to start the week. But let's talk about some cats now. Suddenly we've got ourselves a game in Carolina. What seemed like a one-sided affair 2 weeks ago now is going to be a competitive shootout. The Bengals facing off against the Panthers. And I've been critical of the Bengals, been critical of Joe Burrow, critical of his non-existent clutch factor outside the playoffs, but I just can't see the Bengals falling to 0-4 to start the year. I just can't. Particularly when he's got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the field. I know the Panthers have some talented players in their secondary, but they're not stopping those guys. Burrow's going for another 300 yards and 3 touchdowns again against the Panthers. And while I was very impressed by Andy Dalton and his performance against the Raiders against a better defensive line, I think a little bit of that momentum, a little bit of that juice is probably staying into last week. He's not bringing it into his second start. The team is not going to keep firing on all cylinders like they did against Vegas. I think we see the Panthers regress, and I think we see the Bengals just jump on them early. Will the Panthers be able to score points? Yes. The Bengals have a terrible, terrible defense. But it's not going to be enough. The Bengals are winning this game and avoiding the insurmountable 0-4 start.
If the Bengals find a way to lose this one, I think we may need more employees on the suicide hotline in Cincinnati because the idea of widely considered the most dysfunctional organization in the NFL, it is in Carolina. But the idea of losing to Andy Dalton, starting the season 0-4 when you thought your team was going to be competing for the division is hilarious. I don't think it's going to happen. I tend to agree with Isaiah. I don't see the Bengals starting 0-4. I thought they'd be competing for the AFC North, but their defense has just been too bad. And last week, Andy Dalton did something no other quarterback has done this season, throw for 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards passing. So I think it is going to be a lot higher scoring than we were expecting. We saw last week the Bengals and Commanders were scoring on each other up and down the field, and I think it's going to be a very similar game here.
I mean, the Bengals don't have a very good run game, and now they've lost Trent Brown for the season. The way I see their offense being slowed down is if Amarius Mims is an absolute turnstile. And I always thought he was more of a developmental player, so maybe he struggles early, did not look great when he had to play against the Commanders and their weak defensive line. But I just don't think Cincinnati will be able to I just don't think the Panthers will be able to generate enough pressure on that right side to really disrupt the Bengals' entire game plan.
Rams versus the Bears. The game is happening in Chicago, and I don't know exactly what to think in this one. Because on one hand, the Rams, all of their players are still injured. There's still no Puka Nacua. There's no Cooper Kupp. But on the Bears side of things, their offense still looks like a complete mess. Caleb Williams really hasn't gotten things going yet, or to be playing at an average to even above average level. He's a below average quarterback right now, and that makes me question if against this Rams team that is well coached, does have a veteran quarterback who will make things at least function on the offensive side of the ball, if he is going to make, or if he's going to limit his mistakes enough to beat the Rams. The deciding factor for me in this game simply comes down to the fact I think the Rams won't make a lot of mistakes, even against a good Bears defense. Kyren Williams showed he can still run the ball behind that Rams offensive line at a productive level last week. And on the Bears side of things, we'll probably still get one or two big Caleb Williams mistakes, and we know the Bears can't run the ball. So I think the Rams win another close one, and we continue to see the Bears disappoint.
The Bears' run defense is very susceptible. We saw that last week, so I think Kyren Williams will be the deciding factor of this game. Matthew Stafford is not going to make the back-breaking red zone interceptions Anthony Richardson did against the Bears last week. He is very capable, very experienced, very savvy. He will settle for field goals if he needs to, but he's also probably going to find the open man. I have a lot of faith in the Rams offense to do better than any other offense has done against the Bears this season. That being said, the Rams defense, not special. The absence of Aaron Donald is killing them. They don't look like the same team they were last year, plain and simple. This will be the best game of Caleb Williams' young career. He has played 2 weak defenses in a row, and while I still had 3 turnovers, statistically he put up 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think he does the same thing against the Rams. I think he maybe cuts down the turnovers by 1, and we get a very high-scoring game. Ultimately, I'm going to side with the veteran quarterback, the experienced coaching staff, the offensive savant, and the dominant running back in those settings. Give me the Rams to beat the Bears and start them 1-3. I think the public perception of the Minnesota Vikings has shifted a lot in recent weeks. So much so, they are ignoring the Green Bay Packers, who are favored to win this game at home at Lambeau Field. Of their 4 opponents, I think the Packers could pretty easily give the Vikings the most trouble they've had all year. The question is, which quarterback is Green Bay rolling out? Frankly, I would rather play Jordan Love as a Vikings fan than Malik Willis right now. He's going to be somewhat limited mobility-wise with that MCL injury, back behind an offensive line which is susceptible to the blitz against one of the most aggressive defensive coaching staffs we have ever seen. The Vikings will get a ton of pressure on Love if he plays. Malik Willis, it's harder to blitz a mobile quarterback. He can step up and step out of that pocket and create plays with his legs. Jordan Love simply can't. Obviously, we know the Packers are going to run the ball a ton. I think Josh Jacobs has a similar efficiency level to what Jordan Mason had against this Vikings defense, but with maybe 15 or 20 more carries on top of that. They're going to get a lot of yards on the ground this week, regardless of who's their quarterback. Looking at the Vikings offense, they're playing a defense which has the most interceptions in football. Admittedly, those 7 picks consist of 2 from Jalen Hurts on a soccer field, Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. So, guys who are careless with the ball, to say the least. That's a polite way of saying it. I could say 3 guys with a lower football IQ than myself, but we don't want to be rude. I don't think Darnold has multiple turnovers. Maybe he has 1. Maybe Jair Alexander or some of those other elite safeties, Xavier McKinney, gets his hands on the ball. That wouldn't shock me. What would shock me is if they can slow down the Vikings running game. It's been very effective all year. It's a 2-headed monster. Ty Chandler, Aaron Jones. Aaron playing in a revenge game against his former team. I think he's in for a big one. I think he's productive on the ground and gets things going. What it's going to come down to is how well the Packers defend Justin Jefferson. If they bracket him, double him, put 2 safeties on him once again, and if the guys who are left open because of that can step up and make plays. I think they can. I'm going to keep picking the Vikings until they lose, and I'm probably going to pick them even after that. Give me the Vikings to start 4-0 with an upset victory over the Green Bay Packers.
To me, these are the two most impressive teams we have seen this season for slightly different reasons. I already thought the Packers were going to be good. I thought they were going to be contending with the Lions and 49ers as one of the best teams in the NFC, but I didn't think that was going to continue after Jordan Love went down with an injury, and Matt LaFleur has proved to kind of be a quarterback savant in some type of way on only a few weeks practice, making Malik Willis look like a very competent NFL starting quarterback. And on the Vikings side of things, I didn't think they were going to set the world on fire with how good their defense has been, and Sam Darnold has been very productive and, more importantly, very efficient on the offensive side of the ball, despite not having Jordan Addison and TJ Hockenson to start the season at least. But when it comes down to predicting this game specifically, I still have faith in the Vikings because they proved when they beat the 49ers that they can beat a team that is very good at running the ball, much like the Packers are. Whether it's Jordan Love back there or Malik Willis, I think the Packers are still going to look to run it because they want to limit the hits that Jordan Love takes. And if Malik Willis is the one at quarterback, we know they're going to want to limit the number of pass attempts Malik Willis has, and they're going to run him or they're going to run Josh Jacobs. So I think we've seen more from the Vikings and the type of team they're able to beat. I definitely think it's going to be a competitive game, but I do still think I'd favor the Vikings in this one.
I am curious to see if Jordan Addison comes back this week. He has shown a propensity for finding his way behind those two-eye safety looks Mel Kiper hates so much in recent years. If he comes back, I'd feel a lot more confident about the Vikings and their ability to stretch the field and open up the run game for Aaron Jones. Gotta wait and see on that. NFL teams are playing injury reports close to the chest, but I'm rocking with Minnesota. Unfortunately, my co-host has picked the Vikings to lose their last 3 games, so I'm kind of nervous he's hopping on the right side of the table this time. He may be bringing some bad juju over here.
I'm doing it on purpose. I have my voodoo doll at home.
Truly a hater to the core.
Jaguars, Texans. And I don't have all that much to say about this game. Watching Trevor Lawrence is an extremely boring experience. Every time he drops back to pass, I find myself thinking, man, I really wish he could make something happen here. Throw the ball deep down the field. And more often than not, I am left disappointed. At this point, he's Daniel Jones with longer hair, a better narrative, and more people want to see him succeed.
Cope from a Giants fan, Cope.
He has been bad, and he's playing a Texans team that is coming off of a very disappointing loss to the Vikings last week, and I think the Texans against a Jaguars defense that was just demolished by the Bills are going to do the same thing that the Bills just did. Maybe we'll see the Jaguars show some life on offense, but I don't expect it.
We as a program are above getting ourselves sucked down into Daniel Jones versus Trevor Lawrence stat sheet debates. We are better than that. We're not going to keep doing that. We'll have a conversation off camera. I'll get the paddle. We'll sort this out. Worth noting, the Jaguars are once again leading the NFL in drops. I don't know what that brings to the game. I just find it kind of funny and kind of unfortunate for Lawrence. The Texans are not going to commit 11 penalties this week. They've got Aaron Jones. They're not going to get blitzed to death by an elite defensive coordinator and a dynamic front seven. They're going to move the ball up and down the field. And if you can move it up and down the field in the Jaguars, odds are their offense is not going to respond. I've also got the Texans winning, although I feel like most of the games we agreed on last week wound up going the exact opposite direction. So maybe I should sprinkle the Jags in here just for a bit of flavor. On to the Steelers and the
Just to be clear, who are you picking?
I said the Texans are winning.
Okay, but you said you might sprinkle in
I'm tempted to. I could add some flavor. I'll add some flavor later. There will be some paprika in this podcast. On to the Steelers facing the Colts. Steelers favored to win this game on the road. Richardson cannot catch a break with this schedule, man. He has played some brutal defenses to start the year. Now he's playing one of the 2 best in all of football. The Steelers, as a team, are the best defense you will see if you're just talking about pure one-on-one edge rush talent currently. They've got 3 elite defensive linemen who can force sacks, force pressures, force turnovers. And Richardson is certainly willing to turn the ball over. I don't think the Colts offense is going to be able to do all that much. Patrick Queen and those other inside linebackers should be able to keep Jonathan Taylor in check better than most other teams. Is he going to have a good game? Hard to say. He's certainly going to get a lot of opportunities to. The Steelers are not going to crowd the box the same way other teams did because they don't need to. They want their talented defensive backs on the field, making plays, flying around, getting big hits on running backs, or picking the quarterback off. Looking at Justin Fields, it's going to come down to if this game stays close based off his ability to make turnover-free, mistake-free throws. And what people are ignoring about Fields is he can sling that sucker. We saw that in Chicago. Was it always accurate? No, but he can let it fly to deep mid. And if the Colts load up on the box, which they will against a run-first team, he is going to find someone, probably George Pickens, open for a long touchdown this week. Give me the Steelers dominating Anthony Richardson once again. Colts start 1-3 and are effectively done for the year.
Matchups make games, and when you compare the two teams, the Steelers, as you already mentioned, have an elite defense. The Colts don't have all that much of an elite defense, and they've shown the ability, especially when they played the Packers a couple weeks ago, to get absolutely shelled in the run game. Steelers run first offense, and then you compare the two quarterbacks who are both in run-first offenses. One is making a lot of mistakes, not accurate, playing inefficient football. The other one is not making a lot of turnovers, isn't having a lot of turnover-worthy plays, and is completing the ball at a high percentage. So the quarterback that has been very efficient with the very good defense is going to beat the team that doesn't have the good run defense and a quarterback that is constantly turning the ball over. So I would have to pick the Steelers as well. Next up, we have the Broncos versus the Jets. And I am not a big Bo Nix hater like Isaiah is. I'm also not a fan of the Jets. I would love to see the Jets lose to Sean Payton and Bo Nix. I just don't see it happening. I think we've seen them kind of build some momentum. They're starting to believe in themselves, their fan base, the coaching staff. They are realizing what it is like to have a quarterback that is capable of reading a defense, going through progressions, and throwing the ball at He's throwing the ball very accurately, but even somewhat accurately. They haven't had that under the entire Rob Saleh era. So I think momentum is building within that organization. The defense is getting some life, knowing that their offense is actually capable of functioning, and I think they're going to give Bo Nix some problems. We've seen him have a propensity to turn the ball over in the first 2 weeks, and I still think the Jets win this one.
A whole lot is being made of Bo Nix having a mediocre game. Listen to what I'm saying here. A mediocre game, not a good game, a mediocre game against a Buccaneers defense who is missing Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea, and Antoine Winfield. That was a bottom 5 defense he dominated last week. His trip to Chuck E. Cheese ends this week. The Jets are going to take him apart. Their defensive line is better than anything he's faced so far. Their secondary is going to fly around. I don't care what Sauce Gardner is tweeting. He is picking off Bo Nix twice. The Jets defense might legitimately outscore the Broncos offense. You already talked about Rodgers making the right reads, throwing the ball on time. I'm not going to harp on that. The Jets will be able to get 20 points at the bare minimum, and that is all they're going to need to beat the Broncos. Give me the Jets in a comfortable at-home victory. Now, Baker Mayfield is no punk. He is not going to get punked 2 weeks in a row. He is not going to let himself get embarrassed in front of the world, in front of the nation, like he did last week against the Broncos twice. The Eagles have a limited secondary. And with a talent around Baker, with Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin, that slot wizard doing what he does, he should be able to fry them nice and easy. Whatever. They don't have a run defense. They're letting Robbie White run the ball for 2.2 yards a carry. Doesn't move me one way or the other. They are cooking this team through the air. On the other side of the ball, the Buccaneers have a good run defense if they can get their defensive line healthy. Assuming they do, Saquon's not going to have one of his monster games. He's going to be held to 120, 130 yards. Still a very good performance. And in the passing attack, Jalen Hurts has looked woeful with Devontae Smith this year. Without Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, I don't think he throws for 150 yards. It's going to be a rough show watching him try and move the ball through the air to backups, role players, 80-year-old tight ends, whatever. It's just not going to happen. Give me the Buccaneers thanks to the limitations of the Eagles offense without their star receivers and Baker Mayfield being fired up.
You mean to tell me you're not a big Jahan Dotson guy?
Can't say that I am. Can't say that I am.
Don't believe in Paris Campbell, Johnny Wilson?
I think you made up one of those names. That doesn't sound like a real person to me. Johnny Wilson sounds like a TV character on a kid's cartoon from the 80s.
The 6'7" receiver out of, I think, Florida, Florida State? I don't remember. If Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea aren't playing in this game, there is a real chance Saquon Barkley takes over the game and wills the Eagles to victory. There's a chance, I think, that A.J. Brown is going to play after the hit that Devonta Smith took last week, I think it's kind of not in question that he isn't going to play this week. So the Eagles will be missing some pieces. But in the time that Smith missed, in the time that A.J. Brown missed, Dallas Goedert showed that he could still be one of the top tight ends in the NFL last week. He caught 10 passes, 170 yards. He showed up in a big way. So I think it is going to come down to the availability of the Buccaneers defensive tackles. If they are not able to play, I think it is going to be a long day. I think the Eagles are going to rely on Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley running the ball, Dallas Goedert as a security blanket, and then hopefully their backup receivers can get something to work. And the defense, like we saw them pick up some momentum last week where they showed up against the Saints team that had been very good at running the ball, can limit a Buccaneers offense that hasn't been as good at running the ball. So I'm going to pick the Eagles to win in this one. But if Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea are both available, I don't feel that good about the pick.
So I'll give you a little caveat. If both of them are available and they do play, I'll let you call the Buccaneers the winners, if that'll make you feel better. We need to pad our stats some way in this predictions video. On to Washington taking on Arizona. Two of the most entertaining dual-threat quarterbacks in all of football are facing off. Both these teams have a very good run game outside their quarterbacks. B-Rob has been dominant on the ground, particularly in the red zone for the Commanders, and James Conner is just chugging his way onto another 1,000-yard season with maybe 8, 9, 10 touchdowns on the ground. Effective, hard-nosed Big Ten football being displayed right there. Arizona, they're probably going to score at a similar clip as the Bengals. They've got MHJ, they got McBride, they got Connor, and they got Kyler Murray, who is a threat the Washington defense simply has not faced this year and will not be able to replicate the performance of with practice with Jaden Daniels. They're similar players, they're not the same players. You can't prepare for Kyler Murray. They're going to get 30-some points. The Cardinals defense, stylistically, scheme-wise, is way, way better than the Bengals. They drop 7 guys back in zone every single play. I think they'll have some dude spying Daniels, limiting his success in the ground. I think young quarterbacks in zone defenses with only 1 or 2 good receiving threats are prone to turning the ball over. I think we finally see Jaden Daniels' first interception. Someone on that right side of the field steps up, picks him off, maybe takes it back the other way. I think the Cardinals win this game in a competitive but not particularly close matchup.
We have seen the Cardinals be in 2 games this season where the other team, I think most people would agree, are much more talented with the Bills and the Lions. They were beating the Bills for majority of the first half, and last week against the Lions lost in a very close matchup. So even though the record may not reflect it right now, I think they are a very good team that is going to compete for one of those wild card spots, maybe a little bit early than many of us have expected. And the Commanders, while I am well aware that they are better than either of us expected, many of us expected them to be the 3rd best team in the division behind the Cowboys and the Eagles. Maybe there's a chance they actually win the division now, some of the weaknesses those 2 teams showed, but I love the Cardinals defense. Marvin Harrison Jr. had another very good week last week. You spoke to the run game already. The only thing that makes you maybe a little skeptical is that Trey McBride may not be able to play because he's in concussion protocol, I think. But other Cardinals receivers, Greg Dortch, Mike Wilson, have both been very solid. So I think the Cardinals are going to win this one. It's also a home game for them. So Patriots, 49ers. Now the Patriots are a little bit better than we expected. They did win a game this season, but they are playing a 49ers team that is reeling after having a disappointing first 3 weeks, finding themselves below 500. And the Patriots have a flat out bad offensive line with little offensive talent outside of Ramondre Stevenson being a consistent, powerful running back. So I think this is an easy game to predict. The 49ers want to get another win back on the board against a Patriots team that isn't very talented, and I think they do that this week.
Yeah, the Patriots have not been better than we've been giving them credit for. They won a game against an 0-3 team by 1 score. Congratulations. Here's your participation trophy. The 49ers are better everywhere than the Patriots. The Patriots have to fly all the way across the country to play the 49ers. Maybe Christian Gonzalez can take away Jawan Jennings, but even if he is not a factor, the 49ers still have better weapons than the Patriots defense can handle. The best case scenario for this game is Drake May does not get in, so he does not get torn apart by an electioneer Nick Bosa if he's even playing. Patriots are not winning this game. 49ers win at home. Not much needs to be said. You know, it'd be really cool if the NFL did not suspend Derwin James the week they are playing the Chiefs. That'd be kind of interesting. It'd also be really cool if Justin Herbert was not walking around in a boot, if Joe Alt didn't sprain his MCL, if Rashawn Slater didn't potentially tear his pec, and if Joey Bosa was even going to play. All those things would be kind of cool going into this matchup. Unfortunately, the Chargers are banged up this year. They have almost no shot of beating the Chiefs. I know Jim Harbaugh has this ability to beat his rivals. He usurped Pete Carroll twice, once at USC, once on the Seahawks. He beat out Ohio State in the long run. I think he can eventually challenge Andy Reid for the AFC West, but this is not going to be the game he starts off and does it. He is working with a deck of cards which is sorely limited. He is an ace high here. He is up the river here. He is SOL. Even if Herbert plays, he's going to get beat up behind that Chargers O-line in the face of the Chiefs pass rush. Defensively, maybe they can stand up to a lackluster Patrick Mahomes season. Maybe the absence of Isaiah Pacheco finally starts hurting him a little bit more here, but I'm not optimistic.
You've been hating on Carson Steele, and I don't appreciate it.
Carson Steele did not have a good game last week.
He was very solid.
Easily sucked into hype machines. I judge people based off their production instead of the cool, wacky characteristics. Congratulations, you own an alligator. I own a snake hatchery, and they're not running specials about that on the Thicc Man Inc. channel.
Well, you haven't made a special about it.
I'll let the production team handle such things.
Oh, okay. The Chargers, I don't think I would have given much of a chance in their first matchup with the Chiefs. Well, I mean, they'd have a chance, but talent-wise, they don't stack up with the Chiefs yet. And the talent that they do have that made us more optimistic for their season, Joe Alt, Justin Herbert, you named all the other guys, they're down with injuries or hobbled if they are even playing in this game. So the Chiefs, they're one of the best teams in the NFL. They're making it happen on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is very good once again, and I think they win this one.
Making it happen's generous. It's happening for them. How about that?
Oh, happening? We're going to get into a ref discussion?
No one mentioned refs. It's just happening for them.
Whatever you want to say. Browns versus Raiders, and I don't really know what to make of each of these teams. They're not very good. The Browns especially. Last week, Deshaun Watson was sacked 8 times against the Giants defense. On the Raiders side of things, they win a game and then they look horrible the week following. And I have been very optimistic about the Raiders from the beginning. It's starting to turn a little too less optimistic. I mean, you have Antonio Pierce saying he's going to ask the team who they think should be the starting quarterback heading into week 4. I think that's a little strange. If I had to pick one, well, I have to pick one this week, so I am going to pick one, but I'm going to pick the Raiders win still. I'm going to let my optimism win out because I believe in Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins. If the Giants sacked Deshaun Watson 8 times, the Raiders can at least get him 4 or 5 times.
It's time to figure out how good of a motivator Antonio Pierce is. Stepped in last year in an interim role, succeeded, much better than we were expecting. This year, struggled out the gate, realizing some of the limitations you face when coaching the Raiders. If he can get this team back on track this week, I'll gain a lot of respect for him. If he can't, he's probably going to be a one-year wonder. Myles Garrett might not play this game. He was dealing with some injuries last week to both his ankles, and even if he does, I think he's going to be a little bit physically limited. Granted, he's still Myles Garrett, still technically savvy, still physically dominant and powerful, but if you're losing 1% of Myles Garrett and playing on the Browns, you kind of need that 1% if you want a chance to stay in games. I think the Raiders win this one regardless of who their quarterback is, if it's Minshew, O'Connell, if they sign Joe Flacco off the street somehow, whatever. They're going to win this game. It's not going to be competitive. This is an NFL Red Zone classic if I've ever seen one. On to the Sunday night game, the game of the week. Josh Allen's MVP case rests on his performance against the Ravens. He's coming at this game on a short week with the power of friendship in his receiving room, facing a Ravens defense which is susceptible, can be picked apart over the middle, is lacking at points in man and zone depending on the talent of the receiving weapons. If Mahomes can score 28 points on this team, I think the Bills offense can probably replicate, if not supersede that with how well they've been playing. Admittedly, they have not been tested much this year against the lowly Dolphins, the lowly Jaguars, and a young, untalented Cardinals defense, but I digress. On the offensive side of the ball for the Ravens, they should be able to move the ball fairly well. The Bills have some good run tacklers in their secondary, notably Damar Hamlin, but I would not confidently pick him to get Derrick Henry on the ground a whole lot unless he is timing that sucker up perfectly and hitting the hole at the exact right time. So they'll be able to keep things rolling. They do not quite have the speed on the edge they used to, with Von Miller getting older to keep Lamar in the pocket. He should be able to roam a little bit more. Should be a fairly high scoring, very competitive game. I'm going to side with the Bills. I think they're a better team. They've got more momentum right now. And Josh Allen, ever since he actually became Josh Allen, is 2-0 against the Ravens. So give me the Bills on the road, and they will remain undefeated.
The Bills look like the best football team. I think they are definitely in the conversation for the best team in the NFL among one or two other teams. But when it comes down to this game, the game is in Baltimore. The Ravens finally, albeit I know it was against the Cowboys, are really figuring out how to use Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and operate that run game at a high level. So I believe in this one, we are going to see that against the Bills defense be successful. I think they kind of got the boogeyman off their back last week, where they were still able to hold off the Cowboys and prevent them from coming back. I mean, we saw Lamar Jackson's post-game interview when he talked about people potentially being on the suicide hotline if they lost that game. So I think it's going to be a very close game. I think the Ravens are going to control the game on the ground, and I think the defense will be good enough to make Josh Allen make one or two mistakes that allow the Ravens offense to get out to a lead and then control the game on the ground.
I think using a rushing performance against the Cowboys is a bad indicator of success. Any team can run the ball effectively if their linebackers are having to shed their nose tackles 3 yards deep into the secondary, but I digress. I still got the Bills. I still got Josh Allen. On to the Monday night games.
Titans versus the Dolphins. I don't really care who the Dolphins are throwing out at quarterback. We talk about quarterbacks who just find ways to win games. Will Levis finds way to lose games. He is not good. He's been operating that Titans offense at an atrocious level. So if Tyler Huntley is able to learn enough of the playbook this week and step in there for the Dolphins, I think he's going to do enough, use those Pro Bowl skills he's acquired while in the NFL, and win this game with a still very talented Dolphins offense.
He just can't have 4 in a row, man. He just can't do it 4 times in a row. I don't believe it. No quarterback in the long history of football is going to let themselves get memed 4 straight games. I said last week 3 in a row felt a bit steep. 4 feels impossible. He's just not that bad. No quarterback is that bad. No early second round pick is susceptible to that levels of shenaniganry and tomfoolery. You must dislike Will Levis as a person if you think he's got another meme-worthy play in him this week. I really don't. And the Titans, speaking of the actual game, they've got a good defense. The Dolphins have a terrible defense. The Dolphins have good weapons, sure, whatever. Tyreek Hill can do nothing with Skylar Thompson, Tyler Huntley, Tim Boyle throwing in the ball. Doesn't matter. Just in the vain hope that a Will Levis salvages something out of the first month of the year, I am picking the Titans. It just can't happen 4 times.
It's going to happen.
It's not happening 4 times. It's just not. On to a game which should actually be somewhat competitive. The Seahawks are 3-0, and a lot of people are shocked by that. Myself is one of them. They're a little bit fraudulent, a little bit saucy, a little bit lucky to be at this point. They played weak opponents and gotten away with some games. Their passing attack has not been impressive despite playing weaker defenses, and the Lions are going to torment them. They are going to get after Geno Smith in the pocket. They're going to make him throw the ball where it doesn't belong, and it is going to get picked. On the ground, doesn't matter if Kenneth Walker plays or not. The Lions have one of the best run defenses in football, maybe the best run defense in football. They forced the Cardinals to pass the ball 34 times last week. They are not going to let any momentum be built on the ground. Over on the other side of the ball, yes, I know Jared Goff has played poorly, but this game is at home, in a dome, on Monday night, an environment he has historically played very well in, and if push comes to shove, this Lions team can grate games out on the ground. I know Ragnow's not playing. I know that hurts their offensive line, but with an old veteran experienced unit, you can generally fill in for one guy and still be all right, particularly against a somewhat substandard run defense. So give me the Lions at home to win this one.
The Seahawks are a very solid team, but as you mentioned, a little bit fraudulent. Haven't exactly played the Mount Rushmore of quarterback opponents through week 1. I mean, rookie Bo Nix, Patriots, Jacoby Brissett in overtime, Skylar Thompson in the Dolphins. Not exactly something you get jacked up about when it comes to your first 3 victories of the season, but you are 3-0, so you'll love to see that. And on the Lions side of things, at least my expectations, they've been a little underwhelming on the offensive side of the ball, especially when it comes to pushing the ball through the air. But I think this is a game where the Lions hopefully finally put it all together, put together a dominant performance. I don't think the Seahawks are going to be quite ready for all of the talent the Lions are going to bring, considering what they faced the first 3 weeks. I think the Lions win relatively comfortably, and unfortunately, Geno Smith and the Seahawks walk away with a loss, but
Getting close to that Sam Howell conversation. Closer by the day.
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I won't be surprised if the Seahawks...
Objects in the rearview mirror are closer than they appear, Tristan. They traded for him for a reason.
If the game gets close, I won't be all that surprised because the Seahawks are still very talented on offense. I think they need Kenneth Walker healthy to make that happen, but we shall see.
Zach Charbonnet's been hard carrying that offense the past 2 weeks, man. They don't need Kenneth Walker for anything.
Well, it certainly would help if you have both of them available.
I don't know, man. I don't think they're capable of utilizing 2 running backs. I think it needs to be 1 workhorse and a guy coming in for maybe 3-4 carries. If Kenneth Walker can accept that role in favor of a Michigan man, by all means, let him have it. But I doubt it.
That has been our Week 4 predictions. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. If you want to check out Underdog, use code Thicc. It gives you bonus cash. Check out their specials this week. Like the video, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.